Welcome to today's edition of Daytime Dialogues. It is an honor to welcome one of the most outstanding mechanchim, Jewish educators in America today, Rabbi Yisroel Kaminetsky, the principal of DRS on the East Coast, the Davis Renov Stoller Yeshiva High School for Boys. He's been doing it for almost 2 decades, even though he's very young. And he is a real leader in the field. And I can say this from first-hand knowledge, because I've had the pleasure to work with him on a number of different projects and to learn from him along the way. So thank you so very much, Rabbi Kaminetsky. It is a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today.
It's a great pleasure for me to join you. I apologize, post Simchas Torah, my voice is at about 80%. I hope that'll be good enough for your watchers, your viewers.
Well, your voice is, I'm not worried about the voice. I'm more concerned about the ideas, which I know are about at 110%. So we should be fine. Let me just get started with the obvious question. You run a high school that is very, very successful. It has a wonderful name and reputation all around the world. And yet you've been doing it for a long time. If you compared your early years to today, what do you think are the big changes that have happened in Jewish education on the high school level?
You know, it's interesting, Rabbi Matanki's. I just came from another meeting. You know, so the core values are really the same. The core values are the same. I would say, of course, the application has been different. Certainly, one of the great challenges has been how to use the modern technology. Use it, and at the same time be wary of the challenges that technology presents. I'm sure your viewers and the parents and people struggle a lot with what are the appropriate uses that our children can benefit from the technology. I think when some of the new technologies came out, everybody was all excited. We're going to use this all for education. It's all going to be, and it's going to revamp everything that we do. And then I think as time went on, people started pulling back a little bit and saying, you know, maybe we embraced all of this a little bit too much too quickly. And how do we come to some golden mean where we can use the benefits, but still be careful about the challenges? Definitely technology. The only other thing I would throw in, and maybe technology plays a role in this, maybe COVID also played a role in this. We're seeing now the effects of that COVID had on a number of grades, a number of years. But I think when I was growing up, or when I was beginning my career, so our challenge was to take that negative or rebellious kind of a student and put them on the right track. I always say the kids who are the A+ students, they could have a tree sitting in this office, they get the same grades, it wouldn't make a difference. But it's for the kids, you know, and so many kids have so many challenges, family challenges, learning challenges, all kinds of challenges. The world is a real world and kids have real challenges. I think the biggest challenge when I was starting was the kids who are like rebellious or they're going in the wrong direction. I think that now it's changed to the kids who are just apathetic. They're just happy to just retreat and sit back and not get involved, or just bury themselves in devices or bury themselves somewhere else. And I almost wish that they were rebellious, so that I know that there was passion there that we could help to redirect and reframe. One rabbi once expressed it that when we were growing up, the problem of the 4 sons was the Russia. And now the problem is the Eino Yodea Lishol. He doesn't even, kids who are not even interested in asking the questions. I think that we have to figure out a way to reach even those students who are so off the grid, as it were, that they're lacking connection. With all of the ways that we have to connect now, it's too much, and they're lacking real connections, real meaningful connections.
Now, one of the things that over the last 20 years, which I've seen a change, is the role of school versus home and youth group. It used to be school had this mission to educate kids. Parents had the opportunity to rear them, and the youth groups had the opportunity to provide the extracurricular, those other experiences. And now schools seem to have to take more and more on. Do you have a reason why you think that's changed like that?
So it's really interesting that you asked that, because one of my first jobs at my previous, I've actually been at DRS for 25 years. For 5 years prior, I was a Rabbi at a different schools, Rabbi at MTA. And there, my third year, this is going back 27 years, I became the director of student activities. I think I was maybe the second or third director of student activities in the country. Most schools at that time did not have directors of student. When I was growing up, it wasn't a position that existed in a high school. And you're making that point. And honestly, I think that schools realized that an education without experiences was somewhat sterile, and it was just informational. And maybe there was a time in our history where that's really what people were looking for in schools. But I think that parents and communities are looking for schools to be really community centers. And I think we learned, I don't know how we learned it, it's a good question, but I think we learned at some point that experiential education, when a student can experience a Shabbat with his schoolmates, it makes it easier for the teacher to teach about Shabbat in the classroom. And we just figured out that having more experiences together, or chesed, we want to raise children who are going to be balei chesed, you have to take them to do it. It's not enough just to talk about it. I think Rabbi Bezdin famously, you'll know this better than me, from Yeshiva University, said, we have, instead of teaching about it, we have to teach it. So, we have to help kids to get involved in their Judaism, to get involved in activities, not just Jewish activities, but in all the activities. The more we can get kids involved, actually, the more they're going to learn. So I really feel like the extracurricular really helps. Part of it is also just to make the kids enjoy school, so that they'll be able to also sit through a math class, sit through a science class. For those kids who are less naturally interested, they need to also be able to come to school and have school to be an enjoyable place where they could also have success. Many of our students who the classroom is not going to be where they could really shine, we have to find other areas to shine. It might be a debate team, it might be a college bowl, it might be directing a play or something, or playing a musical instrument, or whatever other talents kids might have.
But I know you've been involved with NCSY in many different roles for a long time, but has that shifted? In other words, it used to be that the kids had those experiences, but others managed it. Why do you think it moved over into the school in particular? Because what it has done is it's diminished in some way some of the classic educational, the formal educational pieces we were able to do in the past.
Yeah, so honestly, I actually came to my school career from NCSY, and my goal in coming to my school career was to inject and infuse a lot of the excitement and passion that I saw in the youth group into school. And when I had started, so I think many people viewed this like separation, like you're saying, but I think if it's more holistic, if it's really one unified experience, then it'll be more meaningful for the kids. That was my philosophy in beginning our school. I made it very clear at the outset that our school, 25 years ago, I had the privilege of being the founding principal of this high school, and the whole blueprint, my whole mantra, the whole mission was that this was not just going to be an informational center. This is going to be a community center that kids could really enjoy, and there's no reason they should have to bifurcate and go to school to learn the Gemara and go to NCSY to have the Shabbos experience or to get inspired. You have to figure out how to take the inspiration into the school. The learning should be inspiring. The Gemara should be inspiring. The Chumash, the math should also be part of a holistic inspirational experience of growth, of becoming better, of having tools. The science should be done in a Jewish context. So I think, again, I can't speak about the sociological phenomenon of why it happened, but I think NCSY should be credit. In my case, I know I have tremendous debt of gratitude because I learned all my informal educational knowledge from NCSY. And I just said, when I'm starting a school, I want to take all that and try to invest as much as I can in a school setting.
Now, you started out with the conversation about tech and the challenges of tech, which I think everyone can agree to. This year, you were one of the leaders among a wide range of yeshiva high schools. And for Chicagoans, yeshiva high schools can be co-ed, can be women, can be men. It's not just men, as we would say in Chicago, but a wide range of yeshiva high schools that actually have limited in a significant way the use of cell phones within the schools. At the DRS, are kids allowed to walk into the building with a phone?
We've gone through a lot of different iterations of this. We've tried different things. And I'm not at all embarrassed to say that, there's also, different opinions on the best way to do it. We actually rolled that back. We originally, the camps, and I want to give some credit to the camps here, because the truth is, at least on the East Coast, the camps were the first major. Again, the yeshivish schools had stronger policies, but among the modern Orthodox world that we're more a part of here, there was really not so much movement towards banning of phones. And one time we sat with a parent meeting, and 90% of our freshman parents, it goes back about 5 years, said, take the phones away from the kids. It actually came from the parents. And the camps made a very strong push. They don't let the kids use devices at all. This happened about 4 or 5 years ago. So we went through different iterations. Then COVID hit. It also complicated matters. But so to answer your question, where we're holding right now is, yes, a student is allowed to walk into the school with a phone, but he's not allowed to take it out in the school building at all. We're very strong about that. The kids are not allowed to take it out. If they want to use their phone, they have to leave the building. And we feel that this is much better for the kids' focus on education, at least in the classrooms, in between periods. The kids are interacting with one another. Yes, at lunch, they can go outside the building, although we don't have the kind of winters you have in Florida, you have in Chicago. But we have the winter here. It's pretty cold, gets pretty cold here too. You may have to sacrifice a little bit to check your messages at lunch if it's going to be cold. But we really want to discourage the usage during the day. We did go through a period of taking the phones away from them, because again, we found, for us at least, it didn't work for us unless I would have like one dedicated staff member I'm going to pay full time just to monitor where everyone's phone is at all times. That's what we found. Actually, our sister school is taking maybe a little bit of a stronger position. But anyway, the bottom line is, we feel like the kids are going to socialize better without them. The kids are going to learn better without them. The kids will grow more without them. They'll have better connections with their Rebbes and teachers without them, without having to check. And they'll be able to focus and concentrate more without the buzz, without worrying about them every second.
And are they on iPads? In other words, texting you can still do on other devices.
Yeah, we give everyone Chromebooks. We don't do iPads. We prefer Chromebooks, and partially the reason is because we feel that they're a little easier to manage, and we do have the software but we don't mind. The kids can email their parents, they can email each other, but it could be that WhatsApp, I forgot whether it is blocked or it isn't blocked. I don't remember. But we can control what they do on the devices a little bit better, because they're only allowed to use the school issued Chromebooks.
Wow. Okay. And to shift gears for a minute, you're a principal, been principal. Your father, your grandfather, tremendous mechanchim of great renown in America. They really changed the face of Jewish education in America. What was it like growing up in that kind of home?
Yeah, it was really, really special. It was really special. My father passed away 4.5 years ago, and I certainly miss him dearly. And anything that I've been able to accomplish was just from watching the way my father conducted himself, the way he conducted himself with people, the ahava that he had with people and for his students, and it's mutual. When a person really sincerely cares for another, you can't fake that, and people know the difference between real care. And my grandfather was someone who, as you know, went throughout the country starting day schools with non-observant communities and convincing people to start day schools. And many of the communities that exist now in the United States are really because my grandfather was very instrumental in starting a school, sometimes in the middle of nowhere.
Torah Masorah would not be in place if it wasn't for your grandfather.
Yeah.
Some of the books that he edited and some of the things he wrote. And in growing up, I grew up in a home. My father was in real estate. My father's out, but so it was a different kind of feeling. My mother was a teacher. Growing up in a home where you had such educators, how was it? Was there an expectation? Was it just kind of natural? What were the things you saw that you're hoping your kids don't have to see?
Yeah, I'm actually 3 out of my most of my 3 out of the 4 of my siblings all went into education, but there was no expectation. But I did say at my father's funeral, I think my sister actually said this particular line at my father's funeral, that in our home it was very much ein lecha ben chorin ela misha osek batorah, that communal work in our home was viewed not with, I think, the lens that maybe most people think that many families involved in communal work have. It was viewed very, very favorably. My parents, my father thought it was the greatest privilege in the world to serve the Jewish people, and he lived his life like that. He felt he was the luckiest, happiest person in his life. He never wanted to retire. His greatest gift was that YNJ, the school that he worked in for the last 16 years of his life. He was in school the very last day of his life, and he had, my last conversation with him was that Rabbi Price, the head of school, had agreed to extend his contract by another 2 years. He was 73 years old. I said, Dad, you don't know what it's such a great thing that they did for him and even though, he wasn't 100% healthy, but he was doing the work that he loved to do, and he was still relevant in the eyes. I could not believe it. They honored him 3-4 months before his passing. I'm never going to let anybody honor me for the rest of because I feel like that was sort of like, I don't know, there was something going on there. But anyway, but they honored him, and they played a video of like tributes from like 80 kids, 12-year-olds, 13 to a 73-year-old man about, he cares about me. He's the one who helped me. It was just remarkable. So I grew up in a home where it was valued. The service community was the greatest thing you could possibly do, and it was a privilege. And the connections that my father made with his students were treasured. And I saw those kids coming into our home for Shabbos meals, and I saw the way the reverence that kids had for my father, because mostly because he cared about them, and he was always there for them, and he would be there to guide them, and he had no ego in the game. He left his ego at the door when he would do anything for a student, and everything else would stop when a student needed something, needed advice, needed guidance, needed help. So yeah, it was, when I got the job, they asked me, you're a young kid. I don't want to tell you what degrees I did or didn't have at the time, but they asked me, what gives you the right to think that you could be the head of a new institution? I said, listen, in my house, being a principal was breakfast, lunch, and supper. That this was the milk that I was weaned on, was work for the klal and carefully. I may not have all of the letters and degrees, and I'm not saying that those aren't valuable. I think that people can certainly learn from them. But in my house, I got a lot of degrees from watching my father and my grandfather, honestly.
And in terms of the next generation, I'm not going to ask about the Kaminetsky family per se. How do we give that sense of service to our next generation? People are talking all the time that there's a paucity of mechanchim going into the field, that the parnasa is not the same, but it never was the same. Have you ever thought about creating something where we can convey to our students how important it is?
I've never really thought myself of being involved in something like that, although there are efforts, there are efforts going on now. It's somewhat, I think Yeshiva University is beginning to realize this. That landscape has really changed in the last 10 years. Just to give you a crazy statistic, when we were looking to hire a Rebbe 10 years ago, I had 72 resumes. And when I was looking about 4 or 5 years ago, I had 5 or 6 resumes, quality people. And so things have really changed. The reasons for this, I think one of the biggest reasons for this that is not spoken about enough, like you said, the money has always been, I don't think that has changed so dramatically, although it could be that what's considered to be the normal cost of living of what people need, how many vacations, people need, or what's considered to be normal living, could be that the bar has been raised a little bit. But I think the bigger issue actually is the pressure that we are putting on our Jewish communal leadership. It could be that social media has ramped up that pressure. Everybody knows everybody about everything so quickly, and just the transfer of information. And if one person has a criticism, all of a sudden 50 people have to jump in, and it's just things travel so quickly. People say like, Ma lanu ulitzarazu. Why do I need to be the eye of the communities? So the question, I think that is a big piece of it. People don't have the self-confidence to stand up and say, I want to be that person. They don't feel like. So what can we do to change that? Well, the first thing I think we need to do is I think as a community, We need to be very careful about the way we speak about our leadership. I don't mean to give people a free pass when they're doing things that are very wrong, but I mean that every little nuance, that we have to realize that people are human beings also, and human beings are not perfect. Only God is perfect. And even the people who are leveling complaints and things like that, also, chances are they're also not perfect in everything that they do. And we need to just have an understanding that people are in it l'shem shamayim. People have given up careers that are much more lucrative to be involved in community work, and we need to glorify it a little bit more. I don't mean in the sense of honor. I just mean in the sense of at least, respect and realize that this should be valued. We value it by the money that we put into it, but we also value it by the way we speak about it, by the respect in the communal discourse, the level of discourse. I think as a community, we need to adjust a little bit. The rabbi is not just somebody who's an employee and we could talk about like we talk about other professions, but there has to be general respect for the institution and for the people who are involved in the endeavor.
It's interesting. That's one of the things which I don't think we have to just look at the Balabatim about it. It's something we need to be doing in our schools as well. One of the more uncomfortable moments I have when I walk into classrooms is insisting that students stand up for me. And I will stop. If I walk in and they don't, I'll stop. I'll say, when an adult walks in, you're supposed to do it. And there are places which are very successful in conveying that and places which are not as successful, or how you address a teacher and things like that. Have you seen a difference with the students, or is it really going back to your point earlier about relationships? That when they have the relationship, they get it. And when they don't have the relationship, it's hard to teach them to do that.
Are you referring about respect? The respect.
Because respect for the Rabbi is also a question of respect for the profession.
There's no question. And we have the same rule in our school. You have to stand up for any adult, male or woman, Jew, non-Jew. Any adult walks into the room, you have to stand up because we're trying to teach that. I think that's a little bit of a function of the general society where things are going. I know everybody was all excited about. I remember maybe it was like 20 years ago, they introduced like dress down Fridays or something. Everybody was all excited that you can go to work now. You're an attorney. You don't have to wear the tie and the jacket. I was not happy with that because I was worried that was going to, the beginnings of a slow decline in general respect. And look at the way people talk to each other on social media, the way people, this has definitely been a change in society. And the way we have to teach is by modeling it. It's the way we talk to students. It's the way we talk to teachers. It's interesting, all the studies, and Rabbi Matenki, you're more familiar with these studies than I am. So I know I'm telling you something that you already know, but maybe some of the viewers don't know as much. It's interesting. You want to get things to change in a school with students, you have to start with the staff. If you want to affect change, I'll just tell you an amazing story about this that happened with us. We brought in Rav Dov Zinger from Israel to speak to our faculty. He's a well-known educator, a little bit of an unconventional educator in Israel. And he told us that their school, they have no tests. I don't want to get everybody excited. We have plenty of tests in DRS, but in Rav Zinger's schools, they have no exams. It's only honor system. And it came to his attention once that somebody was dishonest on an exam. So his reaction was that all the Rebbes had to come to davening 5 minutes earlier the next morning, and they would start for the next month. The Rebbes were going to have a 5-minute seder before davening, a study period for 5 minutes to discuss honesty and integrity, because if there was one student in the school who was dishonest, it shows that the school as the staff there was something lacking. Now, again, maybe that's an extreme and people will think he's off his rocker, but we actually, even lahavdil, some of the Christian educators, Parker Palmer comes to mind as, you teach yourself, you teach who you are. You're in a classroom, you're not just teaching material. Rav Pam lahavdil said, I don't teach Torah, I teach students. So the way the adults in the building model the right behaviors, that's the first place to start if you want to change any behaviors in the kids.
Is there something that you think that a little twist that we could do in schools to improve that?
Well, I like the standing up because I think that plays that plays a very big role, a very important role. There's certain things we need to do in schools. Like, again, maybe this some of the stuff will sound a little basic, but it sounds strange, but like, a student left something in the classroom. He left his jacket in the previous classroom, and there's a classroom going on in the classroom. How does a student handle that? Or he needs a notebook in the classroom. There's a teacher teaching, he left his notebook or he left his Chromebook. He needs it for the next class. Should he interrupt the class? Should he knock on the door and say, can I please come in? I'm sorry to interrupt your class, but I left my Chromebook here. How does that interaction go? I don't know, but I like the standing up. Dress code, I think, is something that needs to be thought about in this context. If we have respect for ourselves, then we could have respect for others. What do our dress codes look like? Are our school buildings clean? What's the responsibilities of our students in terms of maintaining cleanliness in the building? How do we talk? How do we write our student codes about what's appropriate conversation online? Should students have access to teachers' Facebook pages or to teachers' social media sites? Where's the boundaries there? So I think if we have to think a little bit about proper boundaries. We live in a society where everything's open. Everybody knows everything about everybody, and you just look at their Twitter account, look at their Facebook. Everything about them. So it could be that we have to introduce some boundaries in those areas.
It's interesting. I've had some Israeli educators come to Chicago, and in Israel, in high school, teachers are called by their first name. They may be Rav Moshe, or Rav this or Rav that, with a little bit of a title. And I've had to tell them over the years, we don't do that in the United States. We're more formal. And it takes them a while to get used to it because the formality in Israel is very different than formality here. And it's one of those big things we have to look at. If you were taking your crystal ball, we have a couple of minutes more, and you were to say, what would be the major item on the agenda of Jewish education in 10 years from now, or in 25 years? You've done 25 and another 25 years. What would you think that would be? Where do you think we're headed?
So, like I said, we're going through an accreditation process here now. Everyone's interested in change, and I'm also interested in change. I very much want to be out on the forefront of what are the new directions. At the same time, I really feel in Jewish education that whereas the methods may change of how we have to reach kids, but the core values in Yiddishkeit, the core values are really the same. And I view the goals of education, to both educate and to inspire, and that we should figure out the way that the kids should live inspiring lives. One of the special things that we do, I know every school has their own really special things that work for them. One of the things that we do is we host Simchas Torah Hakafos here at the school, and again, just coming right off of it. I mean, we probably had 400 or 500 people Simchas Torah night here dancing. We happen to be blessed. We have 10 Sifrei Torah in our yeshiva. Don't ask me how that happened, but we have a lot of Sifrei Torah. And so many kids expressed to me afterwards, I felt at these Hakafos, like I haven't felt before. I felt a certain connection, a certain excitement, a certain passion about my Judaism. So I don't think that the goal is really going to change. We want kids to be as learned as they possibly be, as excited about. I always view that my main goal here is that kids should be excited about their Judaism. They should be positive about learning. They should be positive about their Judaism. But what the methods are, so I what's going to change in 25 years? Again, I think that making everyone feel special, making everyone feel a part of it, making each individual person feel, with all of the ways that we have of connecting, it's almost like too much, and we're missing a lot of those individual kids who just feel like they're in a corner and nobody's worrying about them. And we have to figure out how to reach every child. There should be, no child left behind. That's in a different context.
I would suggest you may want to try something we did in Chicago at Ida Crown. We surveyed the kids and asked them, do they have one adult in the building that if they had an issue, they would speak with? And we were very pleasantly surprised of the percentage was in the 90 percentiles. And sometimes we get nervous about things that kids aren't nervous about. And sometimes We've done better jobs, and I know at DRS, that's one of the hallmarks of DRS is your connection with everybody, your Rebbe's connections, and your alumni connection back. And so on that note, Rabbi Kaminetsky, I appreciate your time so very much. I know it's a busy time. Should have a wonderful post-Sukkot learning time. It's going to go all the way now for at least a month. You have school again, Baruch Hashem. And continue to lead all of Klal Yisrael and the Mechanchim around the United States with your great wisdom. Thank
And
you.
let me
so
just
very much.
add, you're always saying such nice things. I think the Chicago community is so blessed to have someone with your wisdom and your leadership and your experience. I know that I've benefited on so many occasions from your perspective. So I thank you as well. The truth is, whatever you would ask me to do, I would jump at the opportunity to just repay a little bit of the debt that the Jewish people has to you. So thank you for all that you do, and thank you for including me. And let me wish you, like they say, a good winter. You should have an enjoyable and a successful winter.
Thank you so very much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.